This gospel that we hear on the feast of the presentation of the Lord from chapter 2 of Luke is very striking in how many times it repeats that what is happening is according to the law of the Lord. You know, we hear, as is written in the law of the Lord, according to what is said in the law of the Lord, according to the custom of the law, according to the law of the Lord. They did everything. It's really hammered into our ears. So we want to understand that Mary and Joseph are bringing Jesus, the child, into the temple, and they're accomplishing two things. There's really two foci of this feast and of this narrative. And the first, they're offering their firstborn to the Lord in accordance to what God commanded. It says in the law that every male child that opens the womb, all of the first ones to open the womb, are holy to the Lord. And not just human beings, that goes for animals too, the beasts and all the animals of the earth. The first one to break open from the womb is God's. You know, we have to really understand how critical that is to the story. Why is that so? Why does God demand the first? He saved his people out of Egypt. Remember that story, when Pharaoh's heart was hardened, when they were enslaved. And God hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he resisted everything Moses told him. Let my people go. Let them go so that they may serve me in the wilderness. And Pharaoh was playing games, asking questions, letting them go, saying he would, and then his heart was hardened. There's a whole series of plagues and wonders that God does to get Pharaoh to relent. And after a whole series of them, he finally strikes the firstborn of all the Egyptians. Every firstborn, from human beings to cattle and all the animals. It says in that passage that there was not one that was not dead from in the houses of all the Egyptians. We know that story. That's how God got Pharaoh to relent, or that's the thing that triggered their exodus out of Egypt and into the wilderness to hear the commandments of the Lord. But how important is that it was the firstborn? Because what God did in striking the firstborn of everyone in Egypt is he spared the firstborn of his own people, the children of Israel. So the angel struck dead every firstborn that was in Egypt, but he passed by the ones who had the blood on the lintel and on their doorpost. That's what the commandment was. That's why the Jews, and it's recorded in Exodus, celebrate the Passover, because God saved his people and he made them his own by granting them life. When all of the firstborn of the Egyptians were struck dead, God's own people were granted life. So they belong to God. As a sign of that, the covenant, the law says, your firstborn, the ones granted life by me, are mine, and you recognize that. So that's what Mary and Joseph are doing. They're bringing their firstborn, the opener of the womb, Jesus, to the temple, and recognizing that God owns all life. It's all his. He grants it, he saves it, he preserves it. It's his, it belongs to him. So dedicating him to the temple is showing God, here, this is yours. That's what a faithful person does, and it's what God requires of his people. The other aspect of this, which we also remember, and it's mentioned in the Gospel of Luke, is related to it, because it has to do with Mary, the mother, the one whose womb was opened and who brought forth life by the grace of God. In the Bible, blood is something that human beings can't come into contact with. If you read through the laws, they're very strict about even what you do with the blood of an animal that you're eating or sacrificing. You can't just do whatever you want with it. You have to pour it on the altar. That's what the priests are commanded to do, to pour it in a basin, or if they're slaughtering an animal that's not being offered for a burnt sacrifice, they just pour the blood into the ground, they cover it with dirt. So you can't even come into contact with blood. If somebody is into contact with blood, they are considered ritually unclean, right? And why is that? Because blood is the seed of life. And God is the owner of life. God is the only one who can command life and give life. So all life belongs to God. That's what we hear in this narrative and in keeping these laws. That's how we want to understand them. So how that pertains to the mother is that we know that in childbirth, blood is shed almost out of necessity. You can't have the womb break open and a child born without there being some blood. So even that, in that context of breaking forth the womb and shedding blood, the mother is ritually unclean. She's been in contact with blood which belongs to God. See, that's how it works. And we keep that in the Orthodox Church. You all know this. When a mother gives birth, they come and they offer the child, they church the child. They're making that offering just like Mary and Joseph did. And the mother, too, stays away for 40 days. Those are the days of her purification. That's what it says in Leviticus. 40 days of purification, and then she comes and the priest offers atonement for her. So see how strict that is. I just want to point that out. The laws of God pertaining to life and his ownership of everything, it's reflected in this feast. And Jesus, along with Mary and Joseph, are fulfilling the requirements of the law. They're doing everything according to that, and it's presented to us in the Gospel of Luke. The last thing that we can say, though, is the priest makes atonement for the mother and offers a sacrifice. We heard in Luke that they brought, and it even says, it's worded this way, according to what the law says. What does it say here? Let me find this real quickly. 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons. That's what it says in Luke that they brought. But if you go back to Leviticus, it says, I'll find that now. It's a little bit more detail, and it has something that's missing. When the days of her purification are fulfilled, whether for a son or daughter, she shall bring to the priest a lamb of the first year as a whole burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove as a sin offering to the door of the tabernacle of testimony. Okay, and we said that the priest will make atonement for her. If she's unable to afford a lamb, she may bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because in Luke, they only mention the 2 turtle doves and the 2 pigeons, or the pigeon and the turtle dove. They don't even mention the lamb. They say according to what the law says, and you go to Leviticus, and there's a lamb present. So I think we want to understand that either they couldn't afford, because that was one of the conditions. If you can't afford the lamb, you can just bring the turtle doves. But in the case of Jesus, we know that this offering is special. It's monumental. He's fulfilling the law as the Son of God. And this is fleshed out in the Gospels, particularly the Gospel of John and the book of Revelation, where Jesus is called the Lamb specifically. He is that lamb being offered for sacrifice. And then the Epistle to the Hebrews, which we heard this morning as the epistle, also teaches that very much in depth, that all the animal sacrifices and the sin offerings are eliminated or fulfilled in the one offering of Jesus Christ in his body on the cross. That's his death. So they wouldn't bring a lamb to offer in this case, because Jesus himself, you might want to say, is the lamb. He is the offering. Just a little detail that's worth noting, because in Leviticus, they say a lamb or pigeons and doves. But Mary and Joseph only bring the birds. Okay. So this is what we're remembering on the feast, these 2 aspects. The purification after 40 days of the woman after having come into contact with blood, and also most related to that is offering the firstborn, the opener of the womb, to God. They are holy to God because they belong to him, because he spared them and he gave them life when he took the life of the Egyptians. They are his now. He's reclaiming them, and we willingly, like Mary and Joseph, offer our first fruits to God in obedience to the commandment.